Along with the box being downfired, easy out of the way, he also wants it easily removable, and he wants all of it removable. He also wants to take the wire out of the car. He wants us to put a speaker cup in the trunk here so that he can put his wires in and take the whole thing out. We're going to mount this somewhere over here in the side. To do that, we need to make a whole back housing so that this isn't just, you know, we don't want it to pull out. So we have our Mobile Solutions template, 2 3/4. Plan is to router out this shape and then put a backer on it. Well, you know what? Let's just head over to the router and I'll show you what I plan on doing. We want to make sure that when this goes in, these beaker slide-on terminals aren't going to touch anything. So this is about the right size here. The first thing I want to do is transfer this onto this, and then I'll make my circle. I screwed in the 4 screws so that I can make a center mark, because on the template it actually has the center markings for it. So the last thing I want to do is put a back on this so that it's fully encapsulated. For that, I'm just going to use some 1/8 inch that we have. I like to use the zip tie to spread the glue around. That should be enough of a gap so they can get the 12 gauge behind it. The hole is cut in the side. We just need to solder this guy into place. So the box is in, exactly what we wanted. We went ahead and added a brace. Forgot to include that in the drawing, so we put one on both sides. We have a dual 4 ohm subwoofer here, and we need a 2 ohm load at the amplifier. We're gonna run 2 16 gauge over to the subwoofer, and what we use this for is to hold our speaker cup while we're soldering onto it. Slide it into place, tip it just the way we like it. I also like to add a layer of tape on the inside, more for cushion than anything else, just in case someone grabs the box and starts shaking it. I don't want these wires all flapping around inside of the box. Nice and padded. Now the reason why I use 2 different color wires, it's just a mental thing. I feel like they should be 2 different color wires. I think if you look at it, you'll know you have a clear left or a clear right, especially on some of these woofers here where they'll have like a lead here, here, here. It just makes it easier. The last thing we want to do to this enclosure is add in a set of 1/2 inch plastic risers to the bottom. The last piece of the puzzle is the subwoofer wire that's going to go from the side here to the box. What we've done is we have put our logo, heat shrink on it, logo on top. That way, when you put it in, the logo is always on the top, and that'll make sure that you get the positive and negative correctly. And then we'll put it into the box, and there again on this side, logo on top, and he has what he asked for. We finished up the wiring in the back, we color coded them, and we added clips so that they can be disconnected if need be. We also finished all the wiring in behind the glove box. We have our connection made for our speed wire, and all the crossovers are mounted and zip tied into place. He has kids, and one of his concerns was the kids ruining it. This is with the panel installed. Go ahead and slide the seat back. And now when the kids are in here, they're not gonna damage it at all. And you still have all that air travel. But now that the amp wires are all ran, I want to get this center console back together. Now me personally, I'm anxious to get this USB into place and the bass knob plugged in. And one of the reasons why it is so difficult in this car is that USB wire is super short. Barely comes into the pocket, let alone far enough to move anywhere really cool. So as you can see here, this is the farthest this comes out. You have to like snake it into place as you're sliding this back into the dash. I went ahead and put 1 screw in. Now I'm gonna snap the piece on and slide it all back into place. Success, it snapped right into place. Now we're moving on to the next step, which is the after test. Meaning we did the pre-test, we did the install. Now we do the after test, where we go ahead and we do all our battery of tests to make sure everything is functioning the way we want it to. And then we move on from that to the actual tuning of the car. First test that we perform right out of the get-go is the polarity test. All right, so the bottom one is green, green, red. And the top one is green, green, red also. All right, we got green, green, red. Perfect. When testing the rear speakers, little trick, you can actually come up from underneath and it should flash the opposite. Perfect. Obviously it's gonna do that because this is positive movement, that's negative movement. And it's sometimes a little bit easier to do it from the trunk side. All right, we got green, green, red. Last speaker. All right, we got green, green, red. So that means that we got it right. High five, Fernando. But that's not the end of the road as far as testing goes. At this point, we move on to a much more basic test, the 4 corners. We just want to make sure that we got all 4 corners right. However, we're not going to do that yet because we're going to plug the amplifier in. The DSP software in this amplifier allows us to test the outputs before we start to tune to make sure everything's right. So we're going to skip that step. We're going to make sure that the bass, mid, and treble in the radio, if it has it, is all set to flat. All right, we're on flat there. We'll check our balance and fader, make sure it's set to flat. What we want to do is plug in our laptop. You power up a DSP amp, or anything like that for the first time, it's always going to want to do a software update. Let it do it. You definitely don't want to mess around with something that's not up to date. It will create all kinds of problems for you. Firmware update successful, select OK. Every DSP amp is going to ask you to configure it. Configure it is the process it takes to direct the sound that's coming into the amplifier to the outputs of the amplifier. Every DSP software does it a little bit differently. We try to download and play with as many DSP softwares as we can get our hands on because we don't know what the customer is going to walk in the door with, and we want to be prepared for that. For this particular amplifier, it's asking me the question of fader on, fader off. We want fader on, we're doing rear speakers, and where I'm going to be getting the subwoofer from. Now, we looked at both the front and rear on the RTA and they were the same. On this page, this is where it's going to allow us to identify the speakers. Makes a toning sound. This driver's front?
Yes.
There should be 3.
Yes.
That should be the 4.
4, yep.
There should be 2.
Okay. Yep.
I really like this feature because it allows us to identify what the amplifier is seeing right away. The next piece of information this is asking for is that time alignment. Those measurements we got at the beginning of this video. This could be the hard part depending on the DSP that you're working with. You really have to read the owner's manual on this one, depending on the DSP. Some DSPs will do the calculations for you, so I can just type in my inches and it will do the conversion from inches to milliseconds. Some DSP processors want you to zero out, meaning take and subtract the farthest one from each one of them, giving you a smaller number, and then you enter that number in. Some of them actually want you to figure out the milliseconds. So this is one of those things where figuring out the DSP does take a little bit of time. This one, all we do is have to enter in the numbers. Because we're not doing a active system, we're doing a passive system, we want to use the measurement from the mid bass in the door and not the tweeter. However, there are certain situations where we actually flip that and go and add the tweeter because it will sound better. And boom, we're ready. The next thing we're gonna do is see where the radio distorts at. To do that, we're gonna use our SMD DD1. We're gonna play a 1000 Hertz 0 dB test track, and we're just gonna start turning it up and seeing what happens. The gains in the amplifier are turned all the way down in the software. We have signal. Oh, we got a red light. Red light is bad. Red light is gone. Turn it up one, turn it down one more. All right, where are we at?
35.
So that means that radio maxes out at 35. So anything above that, it's gonna start to break up a little bit. For this amplifier, the gains are adjusted through the DSP. We just wanted to find out first where the radio is gonna break apart. So while we're doing our next test, which is gonna be using pink noise in order to set up the DSP in the amplifier, which is these guys here. So we're gonna be using a DM RTA in the car, microphone up because he's a really tall guy, and that's where his head was. And then this laptop will be controlling the software for the DSP amplifier. This is what we're looking at coming out of the speakers right now, and specifically this is the driver's front speaker with no EQ applied. What we want to try to do is kind of smooth this out a little bit. This seems kind of unnaturally high here. We kind of want to bring that down, take care of this little bump right here. And how we're going to do that is by adjusting this. This is a graphic equalizer, which means there's 31 bands, there's 31 channels, raise and lower accordingly. This is not a parametric, so we will not have the ability to adjust Q and make fewer measurements. This one's going to take a little bit longer. When looking at the DMRT, I do like to switch it out to 1/6 scale. Makes it a little bit finer. You can see these bumps a little more clear. Best practices when doing DSP is to gain down and not up. That way you're not introducing noise, you're not boosting. Cut instead of boost is another way of saying it. Now when setting the DSP, I like to do driver's front with and without subwoofer. Then I like to do passenger front with and without subwoofer, turning it on and off. And one of the cool features about the DMRTA is it gives you the ability to ghost in a preset. I can look at my ghosted image of channel 1 here. Now I can play 2. I can play my passenger side now and compare the two images together. Great looking at these computers and being able to do all this. It's a wonderful feeling. But ears on it are the ticket. I like what I see there. I want to hear it now and I want to make some adjustments from there. So I'm gonna hop in, play some music. I know, right? Now when I tune a car, I have a specific song that I play every time. And we've used this to tune hundreds of cars. And I know what it sounds like. And I don't like the song anymore, but I play it because I know what it sounds like.
From a single point in the center of your soundstage.
And after extended period of playtime, whatever it takes, and you're finally happy, you can deliver it to the customer. All right, it's reveal time. Let's head outside and show him his new system. So here's all your empty boxes. If you don't want to take them with you, we do have a dumpster over there. That's entirely up to you. Here's all your old speakers. So what you wanted was a plug here, so you can remove the whole thing. So what we built is it's not just that screwed into the side. We built a whole casing so that it's like a little box on the back of it, like a power outlet.
Okay, yes.
On the back of it, speaker wire comes down in the top. It's all soldered in there together. So it's not going anywhere. You don't have to worry about it smacking in anything.
Yeah, short now. Yeah.
Now what we did is gray side comes here, white side goes there. Okay. And they're color coded, obviously. And if the logo is facing up, then you're going the right direction.
Sounds good.
So we made this ABS panel here. This bolt here on the top is actually a secondary bolt. So when you pull this off, this whole thing will come off, but the battery's bolt is still there. So there's two bolts and washers. But if you just need to service something, this actually just pops off. So if they need to get into something like that, or if they need to take this off to get down to there, they don't actually have to pull the fuse holder out. They can leave it attached and remove this bracket. So it makes it kind of nice. And it just snaps back into place. So hop in there and take a look. So what we did, we went ahead and made a suspended amp mount here. So you still can put the floor mat in, and still get your the air will still blow in from underneath the seat. But then we made this panel here that is riveted into place. So you can actually pull these screws out, do any adjustment, screw the panel back in. And we sanded the bottoms flush in case the little fingers get up underneath there, they won't cut themselves. And we put it flush up against the amplifier so they can just sit there and kick this all they want. It's not going to hurt anything. And then there is a secondary fuse located here that Kicker requires us to install in these particular amplifiers. And that cover just pops off if need be. As you can see, the wiring here, everything is color coded. So you have your white, which is driver, passenger. We use the standard, wire colors that have been established forever and ever, so that if you ever did have to take it somewhere to have them look at it, they should be able to clearly figure out what the heck is going on. If you do need to get in the amplifier for the DSP section, the USB for it is located behind the panel.
All right.
Just pull those three out and you're good to go. So the one thing about this amplifier is that it has that really big subwoofer volume control because it's a whole control center. And we were going to put it in this pocket because we didn't want to cut this up at all. And we were going to mount it down low here. Well, we changed it up a little bit. You had the factory USB right here. We actually made a whole new mounting for it.
Wow.
And mounted it here. And we put this up here where you can get to it, and it's much easier to use.
Absolutely.
And the nice thing was you wanted to make sure you retained as much of this pocket as possible. So now you do. You excited? You want to hear it?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do is we're going to play some of my music first, and then we'll switch to your music. Does it sound like the little annoying balls rolling all over the front of your dash?
Sounds like it could be a bad day if the stereo was no one else hearing that.
All right, well, let's go ahead and play some of your stuff and make sure it does what it wants to.
Absolutely.
you keep seeing me play with this guy here.
Yes.
So let me explain to you what's going on and what I'm doing. Depending on the type of music you listen to, the default screen is always going to be gain.
Okay.
It's a pretty way of saying level. It's not really gain as per se like a gain on an amplifier, but I guess they figure since no one understands level, they'll just call it gain and everyone will think it's volume. So this indicator, obviously low, high. Next is going to be boost. Now boost, center frequency, and width are three things that play hand in hand with one another. Okay. Boost is the overall amount of effect that it's giving you on the center frequency, which is obviously the lower here to higher. Gotcha. And what the idea behind this is, in your car, if you looked at the output of this factory radio on an RTA, it goes from high frequency to low frequency, and it goes yay, 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 down. So it has a steep roll off starting at about 60 hertz. Ooh. And just goes. So when it's at 30 hertz, there's pretty much no sound coming out of it. That's why this feature in this amplifier is awesome, because it helps to fix that. Because it's designed to be a bass restoration device, and when you're feeding it no bass, that's what it's made to do, is actually bring that bass back. So frequency, the lower it is, the more it will, it goes towards low frequency, the higher frequency. In this case, you're probably going to be using it in the lower frequency because you're wanting to bring those back. And then width is the next one. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back. Width is the next one. If you see a dot here, see a dot here. So what it's doing is it's doing this. So when you put them close together, that narrows the width. So if you're listening to something like a modern song that has a plenty of bass in it, you want your width to be narrow because there's tons of bass. You don't really need to have bass boost in it. When you're listening to something like Hey Jude, where there is no bass, by increasing the width, what you're doing is you're grabbing from frequencies to the left or right of the center frequency and bringing back in that fullness sound. That's why when you first started playing the song and the drum came in, I went over here and adjusted that, and all of a sudden you were like, oh, hey, there's bass. And it's weird. It's not supposed to be there. So that's what that'll do for you. Two things. One, behind the glove box here is the ANC module, which you probably know because you're a Honda guy. No? Yeah. Okay. So we've unplugged that. Okay. This is also where we mounted the crossovers. So we made a giant ABS panel that mounts up into the dash behind there. So if you ever pull the glove box out, they're tucked up in behind, between here and the airbag is the crossovers. Right. Secondly, the only other thing that is attached to the car is the T-harness we put in. Okay. We ran all new speaker wires into the doors. We ran all new speaker wires to the rear. So the only thing we're tapped into is the battery, and we have a plug behind the glove box. There again, if you pull out the glove box right here, there's a plug that unplugs, and you can unplug all 8 of our speaker wires. All right. And that's all that's connected to the car. All right, and how'd you get the power to the back, into the under the seat? Did you put a grommet in, or? Yeah, there's a grommet underneath the firewall over there, and then we put 3M strip caulk around the hole to, waterproof it. Yeah. We drilled our own hole. We're not going through any factory harnesses there, so we don't have to worry about power runs there. Power runs across, comes up the center console here. It's zip tied to the main harness. Right. Comes underneath the seat and attaches here. There's a factory ground point located right underneath this cup holder. Okay. So we went ahead and used that for our ground, so we didn't actually drill into the car to make any ground points. Sounds good. Really, that's about it. I mean, honestly, the most obtrusive thing we did was mount this bass knob. I like what you did there. So all right. Well, that's all I got for you. Thanks for making the trip and spending the time by the pool for a couple days. Yeah, I'm sure it was terrible.